Welcome to episode 2 of Bucky Builds, a series where I, someone with no game dev experience whatsoever, take my first video game from ideation all the way to release. And today, we'll go from nothing to an actual playable Android game. So let's get into it. In the first episode, we went over the methodology and game plan for how and what we wanted to build. This included setting key guardrails to ensure we actually get something finished, having inspirations for the game from roguelikes and endless runners, having a high-level story and theme about an adventurer in a fantasy setting, and the core gameplay tenets that I wanted to adhere to throughout the build. Once we had all that figured out, we went over what the first iteration would be that we'll be building in this video. If you haven't watched it yet, check it out here. Since we've already got our checklist, let's skip setting up Unity and VSCode, which is the software I'm using, and get straight into the building. First, as a scrub, I needed some resources and help. And for this iteration, some Googling and a video by Hussein were extremely helpful and great watches. Links are below. To start, what I needed was assets for the game. Now, I eventually want to hire a design contractor to reskin the game fully, but that can come later. So for now, my garbage art skills straight out of middle school will have to do. For software, I used Photopea because I'm already paying for Premiere and it's basically Photoshop Lite for free. Highly recommend. I needed a character first, so I started with that. I figure a cloaked character was easiest and even I couldn't screw that up too much. And I threw on a shield and dagger thing so we can tell that they're an adventurer. Next, I wanted that deadly first obstacle. It's a tree! It's a tree, but it's a beautiful tree. I then used the tree to create borders for the sides of the Endless Runner by duplicating and rotating it a bunch, and had to make sure that the lines matched up so that the transition wouldn't be too bad, as this background will be looping. Once I had that, some yoinking from Google for a grass texture I blurred over would fill in the background. I tried experimenting with a dirt path, but again, I'm no artist, so I quickly abandoned that idea. I wanted to test out how it might all look together, so I threw them in and played around with the sizes to see if I could make it work. Great. Now I just wanted a panel and button for my Endgame Screen, so with the same bevel effect from the shield and a yoinked wood texture, we got both of those done too. Alright, now for the coding. I needed first to create a player object and add a sprite to it, positioning and scaling it how I wanted. I made sure to add some quick temporary horizontal keyboard movement too, so that I could test before setting up on my Android and implementing finger movement. Let's now quickly get the camera and player to start moving constantly since we are creating an endless runner. Now it's background time. Let's get green. After resizing it, I needed to write a quick script to allow it to move and then find the ideal speed. Sweet! It's deadly tree time. After creating a tree prefab so that we can repeatedly create trees, we need an ability to spawn them in, but also want some variation. So we open up a script and give it the opportunity for variation on where it spawns and a setting for how quickly they spawn after each other. Now we can create and place the spawn point and voila, trees! Except their speed tied to the camera and the speed of the looping background are different, so it's odd. We can quickly adjust until we find a match for both. Nice! Looking more like a game, except one where I'm flying since the trees aren't so deadly yet. First things first though, borders. We don't want people gaming the system and we need trees to die too so there aren't a billion trees still in the scene after they pass. Let's add some colliders to both the player and the borders so that we can tell when they're touching something. Can't forget the bottom border here so that whenever the trees touch it, they go poof. With the help of a quick script and some tags, voila, we're now tree killers of killer trees. Now, I know the trees don't kill still, but before they do, we need somewhere for the player to go after they're dead. And this Afterlife is just going to be a restart UI. We'll quickly whip one up with the assets that I made and some fancy aerial text, then disable it since the player isn't dead on start. Now we're ready for our killer trees. By quickly making it so the player is killed on collision, then making a script for checking when the player is dead to know when to bring up the UI, we've got a game over screen with an ability to restart. Now our game is really getting somewhere, so I'm going to switch over to testing on Android. I'll quickly yoink finger movement from a test I did months ago, then freeze the Y position so players can only move horizontally. Now the hardest part comes, figuring out a way to make the game get harder over time. This is core to any endless runner, and while I could easily just make the camera speed increase or the amount of trees spawning increase, I wanted to build something that later obstacles, enemies, power-ups, etc. could rely on. I came up with a rough plan of making a level system where the level would increase and everything that is dependent on level would check to see what level it was to react accordingly. The problem is I had no idea how to actually execute. So I prayed to the gods of game dev and was rewarded an audience with Master Crab, a game dev legend who helped me vet the idea and ran me through how I might do it. I built the leveling system where the level would increase over time with a variable rate I could control to increase or decrease how fast the level went up, and then started with adapting the camera movement script which is how fast the game was going. After more help and lots of testing, it worked. So I adapted it to trees and how often they spawn, as well as the background loop speed itself so it was in sync with camera speed increasing. And voila! We have our 0.1, and I'm pretty darn proud of it. But as the iteration number implies, this is only the beginning. We're missing a lot before this becomes a game I'd want to play. The first of which is a score so the player can see and strive for more. I also want to implement a menu sooner rather than later, as that'll be key for the roguelike persistent elements and choices we want players to have later. So that'll be version 0.2 that we build in the next episode. Ideally, our iterations will be small in scope from here, so I can release episodes frequently, making sure you're able to follow along with the whole journey. I'd love to know if you have ideas for small scope iterations you'd want to see, or any thoughts on this format in the comments below. If you enjoyed this, make sure to like the video. Master Crab is currently paid in Bucky Mayer video likes, as I don't think his eternal 1% commission on games is going to net out to anything anytime soon. And if you want to see more of this series, make sure to subscribe. Thanks for watching and can't wait to see you next time.